and welcome to Firstpost Spotlight, where we bring you stories that matter to you from all across the world. From breaking news to the day's biggest controversies, we shed light on issues that shape our world. I'm Alison LaGrange, live from Durban, South Africa. Let's begin with the top headlines. Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov lands in Alaska ahead of the summit between President Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin to discuss a possible Ukraine ceasefire, saying he will not make any predictions in advance. The death toll from the massive cloudburst in Jammu and Kashmir's Kishtwar rises to 65 as rescue operations enter day 2. Prime Minister Narendra Modi calls Chief Minister Omar Abdullah to take stock of the situation. Mali's military government says it has foiled a coup attempt following the arrest of several senior army officers and a French national amid concerns over a growing crackdown on the pro-democracy voices in the West African nation. South Korea's president, in his Independence Day speech, says the country intends to suspend military activity along the North Korean border to ease rising tensions on the peninsula. And Hong Kong court delays media mogul Jimmy Lai's trial over health concerns. The 77-year-old founder of Apple Daily newspaper faces foreign collusion charges under Beijing's national security law. Hello and welcome. We begin with the latest from India. The world's largest democracy is celebrating its 79th Independence Day. To mark the occasion, as is the tradition, Prime Minister Narendra Modi addressed the nation from the ramparts of the historic Red Fort in New Delhi. He did not just deliver a ceremonial speech. He fired off a national to-do list with a side of warning shots. First up, Pakistan. Prime Minister Modi's message: blood and water cannot flow together. A reference to the India-Pakistan Indus Water Treaty, which New Delhi put in abeyance in response to the Pahalgam terror attack. Prime Minister Modi said that rivers on the Indian side should not feed the fields of the country's enemies. Once again, the Indian Prime Minister made it clear that terrorists and their backers will be treated as one, as New Delhi is firm that it won't bow to any nuclear blackmail.
भारत ने तय कर लिया है, खून और पानी एक साथ नहीं बहेंगे.
The next highlight was Operation Sindoor, India's response to Pakistan-sponsored Pahalgam terror attack. Prime Minister Modi said the success of Operation Sindoor stems from the homemade weapon systems. Now this, Prime Minister Modi added, was India's self-reliance in action. The results? Terror camps destroyed across the border and new rules of deterrence put in place.
22 तारीख के बाद हमने हमारे सेना को खुली छूट दे दी. रणनीति वो तय करे, लक्ष्य वो तय करे, समय भी वो चुने, और हमारी सेना ने वो करके दिखाया जो कई दशकों तक कभी हुआ नहीं था. सैकड़ों किलोमीटर दुश्मन की धरती पर घुस करके आतंकी हेडक्वार्टर्स को मिट्टी में मिला दिया. आतंकी इमारतों को खंडहर बना दिया. पाकिस्तान की नींद अभी भी उड़ी हुई है. पाकिस्तान में हुई तबाही इतनी बड़ी है कि रोज नए नए खुलासे हो रहे हैं, नई नई जानकारियां आ रही हैं.
Prime Minister Modi also announced the Sudarshan Chakra mission, a decade-long plan to build an aerial shield with precision counter-strikes. Prime Minister Modi's message was clear. If the enemy blinks, India will hit back many times over.
आने वाले 10 साल 2035 तक मैं ये राष्ट्रीय सुरक्षा कवच का विस्तार करना चाहता हूं, मजबूती देना चाहता हूं, आधुनिक बनाना चाहता हूं और इसलिए भगवान श्री कृष्ण से प्रेरणा पाकर के हमने श्री कृष्ण का जो सुदर्शन चक्र था उस सुदर्शन चक्र की राह को चुना है। अब देश सुदर्शन चक्र मिशन लॉन्च करेगा।
Then the chips came out. Semiconductors, the tiny material that powers almost every modern device, from a smartphone to space rockets. Prime Minister Modi said his government is reviving the semiconductor development with utmost urgency. He announced that by the end of 2025, India's own chips will hit the market.
इसी वर्ष के अंत तक मेड इन इंडिया, भारत की बनी हुई, भारत में बनी हुई, भारत के लोगों द्वारा बनी हुई मेड इन इंडिया चिप्स बाजार में आ जाएगी।
Prime Minister Modi linked the semiconductor push to India's wider goal of becoming self-reliant in energy. With an expedited push for clean energy mediums, the Indian Prime Minister underlined that the world's most populous nation has already hit its 2030 renewable energy targets. Prime Minister Modi also announced the National Deep Water Exploration Mission. He described this as a mission to churn the ocean for deep-sea oil and gas exploration. Its goal? To become self-sufficient in energy needs. Now, Prime Minister Modi also underlined that India is opening up to the nuclear energy. Private sector can now invest in the sector from mining, importing and processing uranium. Its goal is to increase nuclear energy capacity 12-fold by the year 2047, when India will celebrate its 100th Independence Day. The message? Energy independence is not just a slogan, but a solid policy framework. Finally, space. Prime Minister Modi said that Group Captain Shubhanshu Shukla, back from the International Space Station, will land in India soon. Prime Minister Modi updated the nation that the human spaceflight Gaganyaan mission is on track. A made-in-India space station is also in the works. And over 300 startups, thousands of young innovators are pushing the boundaries of space tech. Prime Minister Modi added, this is the strength of the country's youth. And if there was a subtext here, it was that for India's space ambitions, the sky is not the limit.
इस सेक्टर का कमाल तो हर देशवासी देख रहा, गर्व से भर जा। और हमारे ग्रुप कैप्टन शुभांशु शुक्ला स्पेस स्टेशन से लौट चुके हैं और आने वाले कुछ दिनों में वो भारत भी आ रहे हैं। हम स्पेस में भी अपने दम पर आत्मनिर्भर भारत गगनयान की तैयारी कर रहे हैं। हम अपने बलबूते पर हमारा अपना स्पेस स्टेशन बनाने की दिशा में हम काम कर रहे हैं। और पिछले दिनों स्पेस में जो रिफॉर्म किए गए, मुझे बहुत गर्व हो रहा है। मेरे देश के 300 से ज्यादा स्टार्टअप्स आप सिर्फ और सिर्फ स्पेस सेक्टर में काम कर रहे हैं और उन 300 स्टार्टअप में हजारों नौजवान पूरे सामर्थ्य के साथ जुटे हैं। ये है मेरे देश के नौजवानों की ताकत और ये है हमारे देश के नौजवानों के प्रति विश्वास।
So, on Independence Day, the Prime Minister's speech was a mix of messages on India's growing defence prowess and efforts of nation building and future mapping. From warning Pakistan to wiring up the future, from deep sea to deep space, Prime Minister Modi's message was clear. India is not waiting for the world, but building the world it wants. And we take a look at news coming from Alaska, where President Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin are set to meet later today for a high-stakes summit that could shape the future of Ukraine. Now, ahead of the meeting, President Trump said that he would not be intimidated by Putin, adding that if talks went well, a three-way summit with Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky, who is not invited to today's meeting, would be even more important.
It's a war that should have never happened. If I weren't president, in my opinion, he would much rather take over all of Ukraine. But I am president, and he's not going to mess around with me.
This is Vladimir Putin's first trip to Western soil since ordering the 2022 invasion of Ukraine, which has killed tens of thousands of people. Russian forces have also made rapid gains in recent days before the summit. President Trump extended the invitation at the Russian leader's suggestion, but has since been defensive and has warned that the meeting could be over within minutes if Putin refuses to compromise.
But I think that it's going to be very interesting. We're going to find out where everybody stands, and I'll know within the first 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, or 5 minutes, like we tend to find out whether or not we're going to have a good meeting or a bad meeting.
On Thursday, Putin praised the Trump administration's energetic efforts to end the war, but his foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov, struck a more guarded note. He said Russia's position has already been made clear.
We never anticipate ahead of time. We know that we have arguments and we have clear position. We will explain it. A lot has already been done during the visits of the special envoy of the U.S. President, Steve Witkoff. The President, Vladimir Putin of Russia, told about this. Witkoff spoke on behalf of President Trump. I hope that we will continue this very useful conversation.
Away from the official talking points, exiled Russian opposition figure Yulia Navalnaya urged both leaders to strike a deal to free Russian and Ukrainian political prisoners held for speaking out against the war. Now, talks will begin after 11 a.m. local time, or 700 GMT, at the Elmendorf Air Force Base, which is a former Cold War outpost. The Kremlin has reportedly said that Putin and Trump are expected to meet alone with interpreters before a working lunch with aides. For now, expectations are high for the first US-Russia presidential summit in more than 4 years. But Moscow and Kyiv remain far apart on how to end the conflict. So what exactly does each side want? For Russia, the summit is an opportunity to press Moscow's hardline demands for ending the conflict. Russia demands Ukrainian withdrawal from the Kherson, Luhansk, Zaporizhia, and Donetsk regions that Moscow claimed to annex in 2022. It also wants Ukraine to halt its military mobilization and to abandon its NATO ambitions. In addition, Moscow also wants Western sanctions to be lifted. Meanwhile, the United States is seeking a rapid ceasefire that would fulfill President Trump's campaign promise. The US will also look to set the table for a trilateral US-Russia-Ukraine follow-up summit. Now, the Ukrainians want no peace deal without them. Kyiv has called for an unconditional ceasefire on land, sea, and sky as a prerequisite to peace talks. It also reportedly wants the release of all prisoners of war and wants security guarantees that prevent Russia from attacking again. It has also vowed it will not cede any territory to the occupiers. And for Europe, what does it expect? That the US will not agree to any territorial deals without Ukraine's presence and continue economic pressure and sanctions if Russia refuses fair compromise. So as the world watches, the Alaska summit will test whether personal diplomacy can bridge one of the deepest divides between Washington and Moscow in decades. With fighting still raging and positions deeply entrenched, the outcome could lay the groundwork for peace or even set the stage for a prolonged conflict. And shifting focus to growing defense ties between Turkey and Syria, Ankara is set to arm Ahmed al-Sharaa forces with weapon systems, military equipment and logistical support. According to reports citing Turkey Defense Ministry officials, Ankara will also train the Syrian military in using the provided equipment if needed. Turkey would share its knowledge and experience with Syria. It has vowed to help restructure the Syrian armed forces and also rebuild the country. This announcement followed a military cooperation accord between the two countries. It was signed by the Turkey Defense Minister and his Syrian counterpart on Wednesday. Turkey's plans on reinforcing support to the interim Syrian government as a part of the MOU. Now, the memorandum followed Syria's request for Turkey's support to strengthen its defense capabilities. Turkey, a NATO member, has been one of Syria's main foreign allies since the ouster of President Bashar al-Assad last year. Syria's new administration is formed largely by rebels who were backed by Ankara during the country's civil war. The Syrian administration's call for support comes at a time when the country is facing mounting security challenges, both internally and externally. Syria is struggling to restore order while addressing the deep scars left by nearly 14 years of conflict. It witnessed violent clashes in Suaida last month, and the violence between the Druze backed by Israel and the Bedouin tribes killed hundreds. It also led to Israeli strikes on Syria, as Netanyahu's government accused Syria of targeting the Druze community. Now, following the Israeli attacks, the Erdogan government backed efforts to protect Syrian territorial integrity. Turkey's Foreign Ministry warned Israel and Kurdish fighters against actions that threaten Syria's stability. Ankara accused them of undermining Syria's efforts to re-establish itself.
Our advice to the Israeli government, to the Israeli people has always been, your security does not depend on the weakness or chaos of your neighbors. On the contrary, it depends on the prosperity and stability of those countries.
Turkey also accused the US allied and Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces, or the SDF, of stalling the implementation of the March Agreement. The deal called for the SDF's merger with the Syrian army. Ankara views the SDF as an extension of the outlawed Kurdistan Workers' Party, or the PKK group. It controls much of Syria's northeast. It has conducted a series of military operations against the SDF in the past. Now, last week, Syria's various ethnic and religious groups held a conference. The meeting was in the northeastern Syrian city of Hasakeh, which is under the SDF's control. Now, the meeting called for the formation of a decentralized state. It also sought the drafting of a new constitution that guarantees religious, cultural, and ethnic pluralism. The Syrian government has criticized the meeting. It alleged secessionist ambitions by the attendees.
We confirmed our rejection of this conference, held by the SDF in Hasaka on August 8th, and this conference is considered as a violation of the agreement between the Syrian government and SDF regarding joining new state institutions that was signed on March 10th. We emphasize that dialogue and that the Syrian government and state is the umbrella that should protect all minorities, and it is the umbrella under which all problems should be solved.
And after the meeting, the Syrian government refused to join planned talks with the SDF in Paris. Meanwhile, Turkey called the conference a threat to Syria's territorial integrity. Turkey still has troops stationed in northern Syria. And it controls swathes of land along the shared border. And even now, with the increased support for the Syrian government, it has reserved the right to mount an offensive if needed. And for our last story today, let's shift our focus to the Southeast Asian nation of Indonesia, where the spotlight is on President Prabowo Subianto's flagship free meal program, and not for the right reasons. Indonesia has recorded its largest food poisoning case linked to Prabowo's scheme. More than 360 people fell ill in Regan town of central Java province after consuming the food provided in school lunches under the signature policy.
After consuming the food, some children had already told US that they had stomachaches, but most of the reports came after the kids had gone back home, where they had diarrhea. Since then, a number of parents reported to their homeroom teachers that the kids had food poisoning after consuming the food from the free meal program. And that's how it started.
After consuming the meal at school, hundreds of students complained of severe stomach pains and many complained of diarrhea.
I'm honestly traumatized because we didn't do anything wrong. We were hungry and we were given free food, but we ended up getting poisoned.
My stomach still hurts. Last night it hurts so bad, like it's being pierced.
Government authorities said that food samples have been taken to a lab for testing. It has also assured to pay for the medical treatment of the affected people.
The organizers of the free meal program have taken a sample out of the food to be tested and checked if they are still safe to be eaten by the children or not.
This is not the first time that government-provided food has left people sick. In May, a similar incident of mass food poisoning was reported. In West Java province, more than 200 students fell ill. The lab results reportedly showed that the food they ate was contaminated. It contained salmonella and E. coli bacteria. Since its launch in January, Prabowo's scheme has been marred by mass cases of food poisoning. So far, over 1,000 people have fallen sick after consuming the food provided under the policy. Authorities claim that they have raised the standards of kitchen operations and delivery, but the cases continue to pile up. Meanwhile, President Prabowo continues to defend his flagship free meal program. Addressing the parliament earlier today, the president said that what his program has achieved in 7 months, other countries take years to achieve. The multi-billion-dollar initiative was a centerpiece of Prabowo's election campaign. The former general had pitched the program as a way to improve the quality of life and boost Indonesia's economic growth. It currently caters to over 15 million people, and authorities plan to reach 83 million people by the year end. Prabowo had ordered $19 billion in cuts to pay for the free meal scheme and other populist schemes. In January, at least 190 kitchens run by third-party catering services were opened nationwide, and this led to sharp slashes in the budgets of various ministries. The decision saw massive opposition from the citizens. The recipients of Prabowo's free meal scheme are children and pregnant women. The scheme was said to counter malnutrition. However, growing concern over food safety is defeating the very purpose of the scheme's launch. And that's all we have on the show for today. We will see you again at the same time on Monday. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned to Firstpost.
From breaking news to the day's biggest controversies, shedding light on the world's top headlines, detailed analysis on the stories that matter the most to you. Catch it all on Spotlight at 6 p.m. India time and 12:30 GMT, only on Firstpost.